Hey, 8th grade, happy Tuesday. Today we're going to start talking about heat transfer, and our main question is how does energy change forms? Yesterday we talked about different types of energy and energy transformations, and today we're going to focus more on heat transfer. So let's start by talking about the second law of thermodynamics. It states that heat flows from hot to cold always, and temperature is actually considered a measure of average kinetic energy of the atoms of an area. So if you are moving from hot to cold always, you're always moving from a higher energy, which is the hot, to a lower energy, which is the cold. When we talk about thermal energy, we're talking about heat. Heat is just thermal energy that's transferred from a warmer object to a cooler one, always following that second law of thermodynamics. And there's three ways that heat is transferred: conduction, convection, and radiation. And we talked a little bit about these earlier this year, but we're going to refocus on these today. So conduction is when heat spreads through a substance when faster atoms and molecules collide with neighboring ones, transferring some of the kinetic energy to them. So we know that energy is not lost or is not created or destroyed, but it can be moved from one thing to another. This would be an example of that, where some of that kinetic energy is transferred. So convection, on the other hand, is when energy is transferred by the mass motion of the molecules. And this is usually in some type of liquid or thicker substance than what we talk about when we think about a few of these other types of heat transfer. So you have this conduction on the left, which is what we had just talked about, moving from the hot to the cold. And then on the right, we have an example of convection. And you'll notice these circular patterns where the heat rises because it tends to make the material less dense, and the cool sinks. And this is an example of convection. We talked about convection when we talked about convection currents in the mantle and plate tectonics. This is the same idea. Heat rises because it's less dense. Cool sinks because it's more dense. The last one we're going to talk about is called radiation. And radiation is the transmission of energy in the form of waves or particles through space or a material medium. So if you look on the left, we have it going through space and then through the atmosphere and the air as the sun radiates heat onto the earth. Or we have it going through some type of air on the right as the fire warms the hands by radiating heat. You can think of this as well as you think of like your radiator or your furnace in your house, which tends to heat things up. And this picture shows all three working together. Conduction is as the handle of the pot gets warmer and that heat travels up the handle. Convection going on within the actual material itself. And radiation is that heat that's radiating off of the heat source. Go ahead and move on to your rest of your packet for today. There'll be a demo up front for you to take space in your extra notes section.